So once again, welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Sean J, who's come to share for up to 40 minutes on the topic of the spiritual life is not a theory, after which we'll open up for the Q&A portion of the meeting. So with that, Sean, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Sean. I'm an alcoholic, and I just want to thank you guys for reaching out to me and asking me to come share my experience, strength, and hope with you all today. Before I do any of that, I just like to settle in, and if you'll bear with me, and I'm just gonna say a little prayer. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Amen. As I said, my name's Sean. I'm an alcoholic. My home group is 435 Compton Intergroup in the lovely city of Compton, California. If you're ever in the States and in California, and you want a meeting that's based on strong sponsorship, God and the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous, please come and hang out with us. We'd love to have you. This program is all-inclusive, never exclusive. It's been what I have found. Them old timers told me the truth about my condition right from the beginning. I have a sobriety date, August 3rd, 1981. I like to say that I got sober, also used drugs. I don't talk about much of that too much. So if you came here hoping to hear some war stories, you're probably not going to enjoy what I got to share with you. I also believe that alcohol and the drugs are but a symptom of a deeper, deeper issue. My sponsor's name is John Flynn, beautiful human being. He saved my life. He came into my life when I was 26 years sober, and I'll touch some of that as I share with you what's happened to me, the good news, the transformational process. Spiritual life is not a theory. Really ties in with the name of your guys' group, Unshakable Foundation. When you interweave in a logical sense, self-awareness, prayer, and meditation, that's what you have.
Hi, Sean. Really sorry to butt in. Just the camera's knocked off a little bit, so we can't really see you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Let me rearrange this. Is that better? Okay. That unshakable foundation. The literature talks about when the spiritual malady is overcome, then I get straightened out physically and mentally. That's been my experience. See, I'm here to talk to you guys about what I see as the problem. The spiritual malady, the selfishness, self-centeredness that is the root of my trouble. And if you have what I have, then nothing short of a spiritual experience or awakening will be the answer to what ails you. I love in We Agnostics, it talks about doomed to an alcoholic death or to live life on a spiritual basis are not easy choices for one to face. And I'm paraphrasing. The alcoholic or the addict is always kind of like, well, can you tell me a little bit more about that alcoholic death? What does that kind of look like? I understand. I'm here to talk to you about what I've experienced. Like I said, I got sober at 16. Got free from the bondage of alcohol, PCP, tranquilizers, sedatives, barbiturates. I didn't get freedom from the bondage of self until I was 51 years old. That's a lot of untreated alcoholism. See, I came to you fine folk, and I wanted nothing to do with God. Absolutely would not stand for it, would not tolerate it. I really struggled with the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous. See, I knew they were trying to trick me into believing in that God that had been shoved down my throat my whole life. I didn't want nothing to do with that God. You know, them old timers told me things like a group of drunks, good orderly direction. You can't stay sober on your own, but together with us, you can, right? I said, yeah, it's happening. I'm sober. Is that a power greater than you? And I was like, yeah, it is. Our literature says on that basis, we can start. We can start to build this foundation. A lot of things have happened to me in my life. I've been blessed. I look at all as a blessing. I've had extreme self-inflicted suffering in my time on this in this form. One ego-fed proposition to the next self-imposed crisis, over and over and over again. See, as I said, I got sober at 16. Had a great sponsor. He was spoon feeding me the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. See, we didn't sit down and read the book because he knew I couldn't handle it. I would just, as it talks about, we bristle at the mention. I would become violent, you know. But he was spoon feeding me these principles. I call it being in the loving arms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's truly what I was. These people were loving me, doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. They were showing me a way of life without alcohol, without drugs. You know, because I only have a certain amount of time, I'm going to go through this part kind of quickly. At 8 years sober, my sponsor died, and I didn't handle it well. It completely devastated me. I was hurt. I was angry, selfish. You know, it's all about me. And my home group was having some difficulties. It was a really large meeting, 300 people, very profane and loud, and they had a good time. They were enjoying life. And there wasn't a lot of talk about God. You know, there were people that did. I stayed away from them. I stayed with more rowdy, physical sobriety people. But we had trouble getting places to keep the meeting. We were rough on the meeting halls, and we were constantly moving around. And there was a bunch of politics and personalities instead of principles. And the meeting started to fracture and splinter. It turned into 2 meetings. Maybe some of you experienced this kind of stuff. I was in love with a girl that was a very toxic relationship. So you couple that with the death of my sponsor, and I was like, I'm gonna go to meetings at some other place. I'm done with this. And all those meetings I went to, they were talking about the steps, the big book, God, you know, and I couldn't handle any of that. So I stopped going to Alcoholics Anonymous. I left AA for 2 years, didn't drink. Was making a lot of money, union job, getting ready to buy my first home. You know, all these things in the material world were hitting on all cylinders for me. I was sitting in a friend of mine's shop, and I always share this as part of my story because it was so profound, and it stayed with me to this day. This old timer, one of the old timers here in California, who I've known since I got sober, I seen him. I said, he was at the shop, and how you doing, kid? I haven't seen you for a while. And I was like, yeah, you know, I started running down somehow. I don't need AA anymore. All them people do is sit around and talk about their problems. I'm out there making shit happen. You know, I got a job. I'm getting a house. I'm gonna marry this girl. I don't have time for all that. And I remember distinctly to this day, the look in his eyes, the little shake of his head. And he looked at me and said, good luck to you, kid. He turned around and walked out. At the time, I was like, yeah, whatever, you know. See, the interesting thing is, you know, I left that Alcoholics Anonymous again later on in my life. You know, I had come back to AA because my whole life had blown up. The marriage had failed, the house, the vacation home, all of that was gone. The union job was gone. I was completely insane. And I had to go back to AA. And I'm staying sober on meetings and pitches, going to a lot of meetings, listening to a lot of people. You know, I found a meeting in my hometown in Long Beach. It was really a den of thieves and a pack of wolves. They just didn't drink. and they didn't use, and everything else went. You know, they call them sober horse thieves, and we had a whole bunch of them. You know, the pimps, the whores, and the thieves. We was all there, and we weren't drinking, and it was like being at a bar. I wouldn't be sober today if it hadn't been for that place, because that's exactly who I was in that moment of my life. I ended up leaving AA again. This time I left AA for 5 years. I didn't drink, making a lot of money, and now I'm in the oil industry. I was able, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, all these jobs, all these things that are good that happened in my life, has always been somebody in AA. Something in AA has led me to this. I ended up retiring for a 30-year career in the oil industry. Down by my house, there's a supermarket down by the beach. I'm in there. There's another old timer in there, Richard Farley. He looks like Johnny Cash. Used to look, you know, slick back, black hair, always wore a black shirt, black slacks, black boots. One of them tough guys, Skid Row wino, you know, had been on the streets, had a lot of time sober then. And it was the same conversation I had with Johnny. He said, "Where you been, kid?" I told him the same thing. I don't have time for all that. I'm working. I'm doing this. I'm making this happen. All these things. And he had that same look in his eye and the same little shake of his head. And he said the same thing. "Good luck to you, kid." And he walked away. See, I know today in hindsight, both of those men had deep compassion for me, wanted me to have what they had. But there was like, better you than me. We ain't going where you're going. We've been there. You know, I couldn't see it then. So I made it back to Alcoholics Anonymous the last time. I was 22 years sober. I'm working in the oil industry. I'm getting off 5 a.m. This is how insane and sick I was, and how desperate. And I'm getting off work at 5 a.m. I'm driving down along the beach. There's a AM, PM. I stop in there. I'm doing this most nights. I get a pint of chocolate Haagen-Dazs ice cream. And I go back to my dingy little apartment now. All the homes and all that stuff is gone. And I go into my humidor and I get a Cuban cigar. And I sit there at 5 a.m. and I eat chocolate ice cream and smoke Cuban cigars and watch Apocalypse Now. And I'm wondering, why are you even sober? Look at your life. Your life is pathetic. You know, I could feel that splintering inside. My mind completely shot out of my mind. That rage and that suffering that makes your skin feel like it's turning inside out. Yeah, it scared me because I had never thought prior to that about giving up my sobriety. I'd always been of, you can't get me drunk. Booze gets me drunk. And the only way I get drunk is if I pour it down my throat. But my sobriety had no value in that moment. So I was thirsty. See, that restless irritability and that discontentment. You know, Dr. Silkworth talks about it throughout all of our literature. We can't be in that state. We can't stay in that state. And at some point, we're going to seek the sense of ease and comfort that we get from a few drinks. But maybe your path is a little different. Mine was. These other obsessions of the mind: sex, love, food, gambling, you know, buying things, you know, whatever it is. I take everything to the bare metal. You know, I've had deep, deep bottoms in so many areas of my life. The only thing that's ever made me feel comfortable in my skin is the King alcohol. Until later on in life, I had this deep spiritual awakening. And my relationship with God that I came to through this transformational process of the 12 steps. And there's no downside to it. See, King alcohol made me feel good. I didn't care about nothing. And I loved feeling that way. I love being okay with what is. But man, like our literature says, It turns on us like a boomerang and it cuts us to ribbons. All those things did that to me. The love hunger, the sex addiction, the gambling, most definitely king alcohol, all the drugs, all of it turned on me. This power greater than myself, this personal relationship with my creator, with the great reality, that has never turned on me. It has never cut me to ribbons. All it has ever done is given me the ability to be okay with what is, to let go of attachments, to be okay in my own skin, to let you be. So I made it back to A at 22 years sober. I haven't left since, thank God. It's been 21 years of going to meetings, being in the middle of AA. And see, when I went back to that meeting, I went back to that same meeting where all them sober horse seats were. And I knew if I left again, I'm going to get drunk. If I leave A again, I'm done. And I'm scared because I always leave. I always got to go at some point. You people piss me off. I get full of resentment. I get distracted by money, property, prestige. I start to see all the negatives of everything, and I got to go. And I know if I go, I'm going to get drunk. And I want to do things different. So I don't have a real personal relationship with God at this time. It's more of I'm back to using that AA collective. And in these moments of not having a move left, of not knowing what to do, of not having that confidence, when my way didn't work and there were consequences that I couldn't get out of, and there was this deep fear, then I would turn to, it's really prayer, but just talking to the AA collective, just letting go. And I was able to stay. See, my first sponsor died when I was 8 years sober. I was sober. I was sponsored by a fool for the next 18 years. I sponsored myself. I was like, why would I talk to another drunk? Why wouldn't I just make the decisions myself? What's another drunk going to tell me? I actually said from a podium at that meeting, you people are trying to tell me that I got to give God the credit for everything good that happens in my life, and I got to take responsibility for anything bad. How about I just take credit for both? We'll just keep it like that. And I was serious. I meant it. I lived that life. I was not going to capitulate to your imaginary friend. I thought it was weak. I mocked. I scoffed. I am not going to have anything to do with God. I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school. I hope no one finds this in poor taste. It's just part of my story, and it has shaped my life. I'm really grateful to be free of it. In the fourth grade, which was a blank in my life for many, many years, I had no recollection. And I was given that recollection, and I was given freedom from it with conversations with my mother. And she was able to get free of her shame and her guilt for the way she felt responsible for how my life, the trajectory of my life. I was abused by a nun, mentally, emotionally, physically, and some really weird sexual way. And I know I summed up at an early age, I didn't want nothing to do with God and those people who claim to represent God. There was a whole thing with my family. Some girls in my class told my mom, who used to volunteer at the school, got a big teacher parent conference. The Catholic Church back in the 70s was very much the power. And they basically told my parents that, it was overactive children's imagination, that Sister Mary Catherine was a little bit strict. They were working with her to take care of that. And my parents sent me back to my abuser. Through these 12 steps, which brought me to relationship with God later on, I was able to get free of that. I was able to forgive that nun. I was able to have a conversation with my mother and allow her to heal. You know, we've talked very frankly. It had impacted my relationship with my mother for over 20 years. You know? And man, a lot of things that thus we grow, more will be revealed. You know, that discover, uncover, discard. You know, all of those things have happened for me in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I had a second marriage. She was a chronic relapser. Finally ended that marriage. I got with my sponsor now. I was 26 years sober. I mentioned John being a lovely human being. He's kind, he's gentle. He doesn't raise his voice. He never cusses. And he walks in humility. And he had no business being at that meeting. I believe, I can't prove it, but I believe God brought him to me. He had ran into somebody at some meeting and they had told him about this place. And he was thinking his AA schedule was a little dry and he thought he'd spice it up a little bit. And he showed up there and he had something I wanted. There was something different about that man. He carried himself with integrity and dignity. And I didn't know all this then. I just knew that he was different than everybody else. Of course, I'm 26 years sober, so, you know, I'm not just going to, I got to make sure he's qualified. It didn't take me long. And I asked him if he'd help me. You know, we started working together. Ended up leaving my wife. Very bitter, ugly, nasty divorce. I'd like to say, wish I could tell you folks that with strong sponsorship now and starting to have this new experience and these principles, that I was able to walk through that and turn to God, turn to the spiritual principles, and live a different life. But I was so sick. I ended up falling in love with a newcomer and moving in with a newcomer. And don't need to tell you how that ends up. You know, at 2 years of being with her, I'm 28 years sober. She left a woman to be with me. And then when she left me to be with a woman, I was devastated. I was surprised. I was shocked. And I was destroyed. And it really, truly was my dark night of the soul. See, I always had to move left. I always landed on my feet. You know, I could always figure something out. You know, another move, another strategy, another tactic, another fallback position. You know, I'm gonna make it work. And in that moment, I didn't have any moves. All my human resources failed me. And I was thirsty. I was really, really thirsty. I needed a drink bad. And I came to a place where there was only King Alcohol or this God that I thought I had so cleverly dismissed, that I was never going to have nothing to do with, that I swore didn't exist, that I was your magic imaginary friend. You know, I'm a realist. I live in the real world, you know. I was experiencing a deep new experience in step one, the unmanageability of my life, that delusion of control that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of the world if I just manage well. I had met my match. You know, I had been mastered. I also know that in that moment, dark night of the soul, where all my human resources failed me, I cried out for help. I know I was having a deeper second step experience. That second step proposition, God either is or he isn't. What's your choice going to be, Sean? God's everything or he's nothing. I could hear the footsteps of King Alcohol coming up on me hard, pressing in. Because I can't feel the way I'm feeling in that moment any longer. and I don't have a move. I know a drink will make me feel different, but I don't want to drink. I cried out for help. I was coming apart. I was having a psychotic break. Snot was coming out of my nose. I was sobbing and crying. I was beating on the steering wheel. These sounds were coming out of me like a wounded animal. I was coming apart. I just started crying out for help. See, and I wasn't concerned with what I was going to get, how I was going to end up, where I was going to be, what was going to be the result. I gave no thought to any of that. Just help me. I was able to get out of that car. I've been sitting in that car for over an hour, just paralyzed. And I started walking up to the house I'm in now. And I distinctly remember thinking, this God that all you people have been talking about, if that God don't exist, I'm done. If that God is not here, I am done. I'm going to be drunk. I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going to be in the penitentiary. I'm going to get killed. And this feeling came over me. It's going to be all right. I know today, I didn't know it in that moment. That was truly the hand of God within me. It's going to be all right. See, I was able to walk into this house. I was able to sleep that night. I got up. Things started happening. And it can't be that way. The intellect will be like, that can't be right. That's coincidence. I don't believe in any of that. I've lived it. I know who I am. I know who I am of self. I know what I'm capable of. I know the darkness that I've lived in most of my life. Things started happening that don't have a plausible explanation other than God working in my life, God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. The phone rings. It's my job. See, she won't leave. We're not together. She's sleeping with somebody else, but she won't leave, and I can't do anything. I have no answer, and I'm starting to flail. I'm starting to feel that restless, irritable discontent. I'm losing my mind, and the phone rings, and it's my job. They said, "Hey, are you willing and can you go up to Northern California? One of our facilities up there, they're in this, we call them turnarounds, where you shut down a whole facility and you do all this retrofitting and new construction work." And I said, yes. I didn't ask no questions. I didn't ask how long. I said, yes. When do I go? You leave in 2 days. Not a problem. I was up in Northern California for 4 months. And when I was up there, I was in the process, on my knees praying, doing inventory. See, I also know in that night, I had a deeper third step experience. This decision was made to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood God. Step 1, 2, and 3. I can't, God can, I'm going to let him. Then I launched this course of vigorous action, the direction from my sponsor, so I could get out of the way. See, I really love the work of Dr. Tebow when he talks about the ego rebuilds itself. See, I get right with God in step 1, 2, and 3. But then I got to do this work with God's help to get right with myself in 4 through 7. That's the component of the awareness, the self-awareness. See, 4 and 5 that's all it is information. It's awareness. And then that healing, the trend. What's really happening is I believe that God is experiential. I can't define God. I don't understand God. I don't need to. But I have experienced God and I know God. I believe that God's a verb, not a noun. And that transformation is happening. Something is happening to me. It's being done to me. The component, the part that I bring is that willingness. Talks about our literature and the spiritual experience and the index, willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty. I love when Bill's story where he also mentions humility and he mentions the belief in the power of God, that those are the essentials to recovery. And when I am in that state, when I have those, that's my part. I don't do it, it's done to me. See, it's one of the paradoxes in recovery. I got to do everything possible to change with the knowledge that I can't change. I can't change me. I work with people and they all are, psychopathic thinkers. They think they're very intelligent. They want to know, they want to understand. And it's like, this isn't of the intellect. This is of the soul. This is soul language. It's in a completely different place. It's in a heart space. See, I know that what happened was my heart truly opened to God and God revealed himself to me. Then and only then. And the beauty is that, as our literature says, and it's my experience, I'm sure many of you have had that experience, God does not make hard terms with those who truly seek God. Because it came right on time. When I asked God for help, he didn't say, oh, yeah, I've been waiting on you. I've been watching you. Yeah, okay, I'm going to hook you up, but you need to do this, this, and this before I take care of that. No, it wasn't that at all. It was pure power. Pure everything that I needed to walk through the mess that I had created, the insanity that was my life, the suffering, the self-imposed crisis. In step 8 and the 12 and 12, it talks about unraveling these violent twists of our personality. See, I'm of the educational variety. I've had spiritual experiences, but truly I've had a spiritual awakening. See, I went from that divorce, relationship with a newcomer, to such a deep love hunger. But I knew that I could not be in a relationship. If I got in a relationship, I would make that woman my higher power. But because I was so needy, so broken inside at that time, I went into a 7-year sex addiction. I'm in the steps. I am growing. I have a relationship with God. But see, here's the thing. I have found through inventory, through prayer, through meditation, that the two biggest instinctual drives, defects of character for me have been lust and greed. And I was not going to give those areas of my life to God. I got this. I know more about women and money than God. I don't need your help with that shit. You take care of my A life, this, that, all that. That's God's purview. This is what Sean handles. I almost killed myself. Literally, not figuratively. Ended up hospitalized. I've been on an 8-year health journey. I was 50 trying to have a sexual life like I was in my 20s, and I do sex like I do dope. I do sex like I do booze. I do sex like I do food. But I know I can't get in a relationship, so I use escorts. Here in my home, all over the world. I'm very serious about my addictions. And at the end of that, I ended up with chronic hypertension, which turned to type 2 diabetes, which turned to obesity, hospitalized several times. I'm really grateful that I was able to finally let go, finally surrender, finally find freedom. I was able to come to the realization that the rules apply to Sean, because I never thought they did. I always thought rules were for church folk and chumps, the dumb people that couldn't figure out how to hustle, didn't know what life was all about, weak people. Those rules don't apply to me. And I came to realize that I had to give every area of my life to God, including my sex life, my love life, food, my health, money. I have new relationships with money. I have new relationships with love. I have a new relationship with health through God's power. See, this truly is not theory. This is not theoretical. It's experiential. I believe that it has to come through deep suffering. I think that's how people get to God. I will say this, and it may be unpopular, but I believe it's true. It's what I witnessed. Bill talked about in his letter on emotional sobriety, where he said that he was afraid that many, even many of the AA old timers, the oldsters, they get stuck on the booze cure, and they're missing the point. I see more people struggling with untreated alcoholism, dying an alcoholic death, because you don't have to be drinking to die an alcoholic death. Alcohol is but a symptom. Selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of my trouble. Self and all of its manifestations are alcoholism, untreated alcoholism, dying every day without an ounce of alcohol in my system. I see people doing that as opposed to living by spiritual principles. I see it in my home group. I see it in the meetings that I attend. I'm not better than anybody. I don't condemn them. I don't throw them away. I don't try to fix them. I just carry the message, my story, what's happened to me, the message, which is the big book, the 12 and 12. Precisely how we've recovered. I talk to a lot of people, and I get to talk to more, and I'm always surprised at how many people have not been through the 12 steps, have not done inventory as it's laid out in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They come up with all these other worksheets and this and that, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. But why wouldn't I want to do it foundationally? Why wouldn't I want to have the experience that my forefathers had? Precisely how we recovered. I've done other types of inventory. I love the inventory in the 12 and 12. I've done some really deep dives with some stuff that Mark Houston and Dave F. came up with that's based on our literature. There's a Joe and Charlie workshop, which is really the way they did in the big book. The message that I carry is this message of untreated alcoholism. The message of, dying an alcoholic death without an ounce of alcohol in your system. How going through this 12-step process, getting in a right relationship with God, getting in a right relationship with myself in 4 through 7, and with God's help doing that, and then with God's help getting in a right relationship with my brothers and my sisters in 8 and 9, setting the record straight, cleaning up the wreckage, living differently. In 10, 11, and 12, I incorporate all of that. I will tell you this today, that the most significant, the most important relationship I have is my relationship with God. If I'm right with God, I'm right with all of you. I don't have to take things personal. I don't have to get attached to it. What is, I can be okay with what is. I can do my very best. My word's impeccable. I don't make assumptions. I love the 4 agreements. I find all of that to be right in line with what our literature says. Our literature talks about utilizing what other people of spiritual practices have to offer. It talks about, how we mocked and scorned and scoffed at people of faith, when actually we should have been looking to them, because they had some sense of what life really was, and we had none at all. So I've looked to Thomas Merton, Richard Rohr, and Father Thomas Keating, and some of the Christian mystics. And there's a Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who's a member of in recovery, who have written fascinating, enlightening books on personal relationship with God and how they came to be in right relationship with their Creator. Don't let God, the word God, throw you off. It's just a label. If you like great reality, Creator, I have found a relationship with God through the 12-step process. I'm so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only way I could have got back to my Father's table. I truly am the prodigal son. I believe that the God that I have found in AA, through AA, is big enough to incorporate all beliefs and wants to have a relationship with each one of God's children so desperately, so much, that God will meet you wherever you can meet God. If it's in nature, if it's at an AA meeting, at the mosque, in church, in the temple, in music, in art. That's what I've found. And I'm going to end right there. Thank you very much. Yes, emotional sobriety is, I believe, being in right relation with God, right relation with myself, and right relation with all of you. So I lived most of my life living by my thinking and my emotions, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. Today, I live my life anchored to spiritual principles. So I might think something that's negative. I might feel threatened. I might feel vengeful. But what does the principle require of me? What would the master have me do? Emotional sobriety for me really is truly, it's not perfection, but it's being okay with what is, being in the flow, you know, a lot of awareness, a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation lead to emotional sobriety. Hopefully that's helpful.
It's really helpful. Thanks, Sean. And next we've got Blaine, who's got his hand up. Blaine, would you like to come in with your question, please?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the meeting and thank you for the share. I'm Blaine, I'm an addict. You spoke about like a breakup in part of your share there, and I'm sort of going through something, the same thing at the moment, and it's hurt me with what's happened. And it's since that's happened, all I'm seeing is negatives in recovery. I haven't been doing the recovery fully. I must admit that straight away, but I'm trying to work on that. But it just seems to be all negative at the minute. I'm wondering if you've ever been through that. What did you do to get through that and to change?
Yeah, many times I would use outside distractions and there was no change. I would just be deeper into sickness, into untreated alcoholism. I hope you have a sponsor. If you don't, I hope you get one. Go to some meetings, probably men's meetings. Spend a lot of time with your sponsor. Prayer and meditation are the two best tools, spiritual tools that we have. And you're going to grieve, and you're going to feel a certain kind of way. Alcoholics and addicts always want to feel good, and if you're talking about a breakup or something traumatic happening, you're going to feel sad. You're going to be angry. You're going to have negative reactions to life. But we have a saying in Compton, stick with the saw, even if that blade gets dull, it'll cut. Stay in your develop routines, rituals, some reading, some contemplation on what you read, phone calls to other drunks, prayer, meditation, a meeting. You stay in that structure, and at some point, you'll realize, like, I'm laughing. I'm feeling pretty free. That's off of me. I'm not attached to it anymore. You've let go of it. I don't think you're ready to let go of it yet. Because when we become ready to let go of it, it gets taken from us. But in the meantime, I'll say I'm ready to let go, but in my mind, I'm justifying, I'm rationalizing, I'm looking at other people's, it's their fault. I'm looking at her behavior or his behavior, which means I'm not ready to let go. But that's okay too. You got to have your experience, just be gentle with yourself, man. Be kind to yourself. Ask God for help, whatever your belief is, ask God for help. The willingness to be willing.
Thanks for your question, Blaine. Elaine, would you like to come in with your question?
Hi, my name's Elaine. I'm an alcoholic. I'm feeling very fragile today. Thank you so much for this meeting and the share. I really listened to every word very carefully. And I've been on many meetings in the last few weeks after being around the rooms for 6 years, and in the last month or two working with a sponsor and doing my steps, and for the first time doing my steps, and I'm scared. I'm really scared. And my question is, when I start to feel well, which I do when I've been working these steps, or whenever I stop drinking, I feel really well very quickly. And I quickly turn arrogant. I all of a sudden become the millionaire. I can make up all sorts of mind games as to where I am in life, and none of them are true. I quickly forget. The lies come in so quickly. The lies of the past, of all the losses I've got and had. What is the best thing I can do on a daily basis to stop the lies coming in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Our literature talks about, we call it in Compton quick healing skills. You got quick healing skills, and it talks about not being able to recall with sufficient force. I'm paraphrasing, the horror, the misery of a week ago, a month ago, even a day ago, sometimes, and of your own power, you're hopeless. This isn't of the intellect. And my suggestion is to continue with your sponsor, to get a routine, get things that you're doing daily that really helps us to have prayer and meditation practice, reading some of the literature, sitting with that, sitting in contemplation over that, having discussions with other alcoholics about what you're reading out of the big book, going to your meetings, not keeping, when you start thinking that crazy shit, see, we have a saying around here, you're as sick as your secrets. Don't keep that to yourself. Tell on yourself. Call somebody, say, hey, I'm thinking this. I know it's crazy. I know this is some bullshit. I just got to get it out so I don't keep thinking about it. And you'll find that that'll take that pressure off you. You get that sense of relief. And as you keep doing these things, this becomes a way of life. There is no place, there is no status, there is no plateau, there is no graduation. You're an alcoholic. If you say you're an alcoholic, then you're always going to be an alcoholic. Once a pickle, you can't be a cucumber again. You can't drink with success. You can make all the money and do all the things in the material world, but as our literature says, you got to address spiritual malady first, and then you'll straighten out in those other areas. We tend to try to do the other shit first. We get it all ass backwards all the time. We're just ass backwards people. That's that selfishness and self-centeredness. It's the root of our trouble. But be gentle with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. You're right where you belong. AA's got you, CA's got you, God's got you.
Thanks so much for your...
the answers are within each one of us. The truth, our true self, our God consciousness. The literature says it. Other religions say it. Deep down in each man, woman, and child is this conception of God. That's our true self.
Thanks, Sean, and thank you for your question, Elaine. We've got 2 more hands up, 3 more hands up, and just under 5 minutes left. Really nice to get everyone in if we can. So if you come in quickly with your question, that would be great. And next we have Young.
Yeah, thank you, Isaac. Hi, my name's Young. I'm a recovered addict. Thank you so much, Sean. Very powerful. You reminded me what the gift of desperation, that was the best gift I was ever given. It was only when I was dragged to that place of utter defeat that I reached out for God and I found God. And what I was going to ask you, you've just quoted actually. I was going to say that bit from We Agnostics. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. Please discuss. So I'd like to
Yeah. It's only there that we truly find out who we are, and we become free. And like I said, I believe the God that AA brought me to wants to have a relationship with me so desperately, so much. Meet me wherever I can meet God. I believe that God is on a molecular level in everything. We turn to spirits. Carl Jung talks about how the alcoholic and the addict too will turn to this stuff trying to feel a certain way. It's not that we don't feel it, we feel too much, and this 12-step process, this transformation, brings me into this conscious connection with God that it's an intuitive thing. It's a soul space or a heart space. It's not in the intellect. Yeah, I try to describe it with my language, which falls so short. We're trying to describe the undescribable, but that's all we have. It's just these common experiences. We have language to describe it, but just that sense, that well-being. I believe without any reservations that God's got me. I live in full expectation today that God's got me. AA's got me. Same thing. And I just keep saying yes. It's an intuitive thing. The book talks about what used to be a hunch or a brainstorm becomes a working part of our mind that we can trust and rely on. And it's not talking about the intellect. It's talking about an inner seeing. It's knowing through the unknown. When I get to a place that, man, I don't know anything. That's where the wisdom is, in the unknowing. I ain't met a drunk or an addict yet that don't always think they're right and they always know everything, until they get humbled, until they start reaching for humility as the conduit to how they want to live. To be kind, gentle, aware, empathetic, have integrity, have character. I never had any character. I thought I was so strong and confident until I wasn't. Then I'd either blow the whole thing up or I'd run away, start all over again. But now, see, God doesn't save me. God sustains me. God sustains me through everything. Gives me the power. Power marshaled by my will is insufficient for me to function in this world. And when I say function, I'm not talking about the selfish, self-centered functioning. Hooray for me, F you. Sean first, foremost, always. I've lived that way most of my life. Psychopathic thinker. Today, I live my life from my soul consciousness, my heart space. I just keep saying yes and showing up for whatever God has in store for me. It's a beautiful thing. Hopefully that answers it somewhat.
Thanks for your question, Young. We've got time for one more quick question. So, Steve, would you like to come in, please? Cheers.
Hi, Steve B. Addict. Fantastic share, Sean. I'm just back from a horrendous 18-month relapse. Been around this stuff for about 3 years. Good to see you, Young, as well. And I've got a resentment with God. When I first came in, I lost my daughter, which is my only daughter. I've got 3 sons now as well. And I've just come back in, and her auntie died, who's only 36, of alcoholism, just over 10 days ago now. And you mentioned that it was her angry, selfish, all about me when your sponsor died, and I'm very sorry to hear that. I mean, you said a bit about the delusion of satisfaction. Now, I'm just about to go into my step 4, and I'm convinced about, I use a number, 222, as my high power. I did first time round, and I took my foot off the gas, and their inquest actually sent me out the door, but it was because I wasn't doing everything properly. Now, my question to you is, how do I get rid of this resentment with God through death and blaming him for taking my baby girl away? And I'm really obviously going to put that down in my step 4, but it is a big question, and sorry to bring it.
Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss, and welcome home. I've never had that experience of losing a child. I've met many people, sponsor somebody that has, and I can't even begin to imagine that pain and words to try to alleviate your resentment. I don't really have them, other than I believe, as I said, that God doesn't save me or anyone, that God sustains me. The resentment, maybe for now, a group of drunks, these meetings, as a power greater than yourself. And I sponsor a guy right now whose son committed suicide, and he was angry, and he was destroyed, and he was devastated, and all I just tried to do was love him, and he had to go away from me for a while. He didn't drink, but he couldn't hear any of that stuff, couldn't hear any of the God talk, and I just kept just being his friend and checking on him, and he's finally come back. I'm sponsoring him again, and he's come back, and something has happened within him with his personal relationship with God, that he has let go of that anger like you have towards God. And how that's happened, I'm not sure. He hasn't told me about it yet. I hope he can share it with me at some point, But all I can say, man, is hang in there, keep going to the meetings. And this will, at some point, through your sponsor and the programs that you're going to, the meetings you're going to, and the literature you're reading, at some point, you'll get free from it.
Thank you for your question, Steve. So this now brings us to the end of sharing time, but not quite the end of the meeting.